Welcome to the Town Council special meeting, May the 28th, 2020, via electronic communications. This special meeting of the Town Council is being held electronically as provided under Virginia, Section 2.2-3702, subsection A3, which permits
coming through.
Which permits public bodies to meet by electronic communications without a quorum physically assembled at one location since on March 12, 2020, Governor Northam declared a state of emergency for the Commonwealth of Virginia arising from the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. The purpose of this meeting is, for one, the adoption of the fiscal year budget; two, hear an appeal of the Historic District Review Board decision for 209 Mason Avenue; and three, updates from the town manager regarding the COVID-19 pandemic emergency. An audio recording is being made of this meeting. This meeting is also being live streamed on Facebook, as well as being videotaped for viewing from the town's website after processing. Public comments will be accepted this evening via Facebook Live and emails to clerk@capecharles.org. Comments were also solicited to be emailed to the clerk prior to the meeting. All votes this evening will be taken by roll call vote and recorded in minutes. Any council members who leave the meeting or who arrive after the start of the meeting must verbally note their attendance. All essential business, only essential business of the town of Cape Charles can be done in this manner. These procedures will remain in effect until the COVID-19 crisis has been alleviated. Do any council members have any questions about this process?
No.
No.
With that being said, I would like to say welcome to our newest member, Councilman Fulmer. And I would like to get a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Bannon.
Bannon, present.
Councilman Fulmer.
Present.
Councilman Buckholz.
Buckholz, present.
Councilwoman Holloway.
Holloway present.
Vice Mayor Bennett.
Bennett, present.
Councilman Grossman.
Grossman present.
Let it be known we've established a quorum. Item 3, public comment, agenda items only, accepted via email to the clerk@capecharles.org during the meeting. Ms. Libby, do we have any public comments this evening?
Yes, I have quite a few to be read into the record. Okay. Let's see, the first one is from Bob Panic. It says, the mayor, council, and staff have done a commendable job in developing the budget for next fiscal year in light of the depressed revenue projections caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. I ask that the council make one adjustment to the budgeted capital projects. Please replace the $15,000 project to restripe the parking spaces, on Mason Avenue with the $14,000 project to replace the zip line in the children's playground. Council adopted a capital improvement program policy document in January of this year. The need for proper maintenance of existing town assets is stressed on page 7. The zip line had reached the end of its service life and was removed about a year ago because of high maintenance costs and safety concerns. It is time to replace this asset and restore the playground to its formal functionality. While some people dislike backing into the parking spaces on Mason Avenue, they are perfectly functional in their current state. New paint can wait until revenue improves. Take this opportunity to do something positive for the children of our town and those of our guests. This next one is from Tim Russell at 522A Washington Avenue. The quality of playground in Central Park contributes to the quality of our community experience and the quality of our visitors' experience, especially children. As a citizen of Cape Charles and someone interested in making changes to substantially improve our community, our visitors' experience of it, I am requesting that council add replacement of the zip line, $14,000, to the 2021 budget. One potential area to find the funds is to delay the repainting of the parking spaces on Mason Avenue, $15,000. The zip line was removed a year ago due to high maintenance costs and safety concerns. Repainting perfectly functional parking spaces because some people dislike backing in can wait until revenue projections improve. This one is from James Regenbaugh. As an owner in Bay Creek Fairways neighborhood, I particularly see the value to the community of summer concerts in Central Park. Please let the council know that this is a valuable amenity to many in enjoying the Cape Charles experience. I would request that funding to keep the concerts going and also any improvements to Central Park be high on the list of public expenditures. Joe Natale, 110 Blue Heaven Road. I encourage the Cape Charles Town Council to add the replacement of the Cape Kids Playground zip line at $14,000 to the budget and to defer the repainting of the parking spaces on Mason Avenue at $15,000 to a later budget to keep the proposed budget balanced. The zip line was removed over a year ago due to high maintenance costs and safety concerns and is yet to be replaced. The zip line is an integral part of the playground and our children, both residents and visitors, deserve to have it replaced. Repainting perfectly functional parking spaces on Mason Avenue can wait until revenue projections improve. Rob Smithwick, 11 Kings Bay Drive. It has come to parking striping to reverse the reverse on Mason are being considered for another project. I urge you not to let that happen. We need to be thinking of our visitors with regard to this change/correction. This has been in the waiting a long time, and we should complete this already approved project as soon as possible. Gordon Campbell, Grant Altitude Gallery. I encourage the Cape Charles Town Council to add the repainting of the parking spaces on Mason Avenue at $15,000 to the town budget. I am strongly against suggestions by others to defer the repainting in favor of a zip line at $14,000 at Central Park Playground. Zip lines are not a common element at children's playgrounds and would be used by a small subset of the children utilizing the playground. Most young children do not have the upper body strength to properly utilize a zip line. In addition, at $14,000, I feel the price is excessive for a single piece of playground equipment. On the other hand, changing parking to a front-end angle would yield immediate economic benefits to the town. As you all know, the reverse angle parking was implemented by the town with no input from stakeholders along Mason Avenue. The town has promised to restripe. The project has been delayed several times now, so please add it to the budget and get it done. Jean Hollister at 7 Park Row. We would like the Cape Charles Town Council to replace the zip line to the Cape Charles Playground, which would cost $14,000, instead of repainting the parking spaces on Mason Avenue, which would cost $15,000. The zip line was a special part of the playground that made it unique, and it was enjoyed by many. This would be a better use of funds. The zip line brings happiness to everyone, whereas the paint on the parking spaces don't even look like they need painting. Michael and Terry Strube at 522B Washington Avenue. Terry and I would like to endorse the initiative to restore the zip line to the Cape Kids Playground. The playground is usually the first stop when our grandchildren visit Cape Charles, and the zip line was the highlight. In fact, 3 of our grandchildren even in video in the playground sporting their locally purchased capes. With its relatively low height and soft earth below, we've never had any safety concerns about their using it. Its absence wouldn't keep them away from the playground, but it would definitely lessen their total enjoyment. Appreciate you taking this request under considerations. Suzanne Galabart, owner of Periwinkles. Thank you for the opportunity to share my comments. I have reviewed the agenda packet and understand that the 2020-2021 budget is up for approval. I see a line item under capital projects, public works for Mason Avenue restriping at a cost of $15,000. I strongly encourage the approval of this line item in the budget. As a business owner in Cape Charles, I have witnessed firsthand the problems that the reverse angle parking has caused. To be more specific, here are some examples that my customers have experienced. Confusion about how to back into the reverse angle parking space. Inability to successfully execute parking. Car is either too far to one side or another. Car is severely angled incorrectly. Both of these scenarios have made the adjacent parking spot unusable. Inability to judge space while backing in, resulting many times in hitting the car in adjacent spot. frustration in not wanting to reverse angle park, resulting in anger towards town and businesses, inability to see oncoming cars while pulling out of spot due to large SUV or truck parked to the left. I am so pleased to see this line item in the budget and wholeheartedly support its approval. The business community understood that the reverse angle parking would be reversed a long time ago and have patiently waited for this action. While waiting, we have also understood that the process takes a long time due to VDOT. It appears as if the wait is over. Please approve this line item so that the funds allocated for reversing the reverse angle parking, restriping the parking spots, can be used for that exact purpose. Thank you for allowing me to share my comments. I look forward to seeing the reverse angle parking reverse.
You're frozen.
You're muted, Smitty.
Libby, I think we've lost you. Libby, there?
Sorry about that. We lost it. Is everybody still on?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes?
Okay.
Yes.
This is from Jordan Dale. It says, hello, I am in support for the repainting of the parking situation down Mason rather than spend money on a zip line at the park. Please keep our town's economy and tourism at the top of the priority list. Ellen Moore of Ellen Moore Gallery. I am writing this letter.
Yep, she won again.
Yep. Libby, we've lost you again.
Is Andy still functioning?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. We'll try this again. Since 1995, I had owned property at 203, 205, and 300 Mason. During that period, I have been active in 2 businesses, currently owning the Ellen Moore Gallery at 223 Mason. The back-end parking has been a problem since its inception. Many customers complain about it and find it difficult to back in properly. I do not remember these negative comments before the parking pattern was changed. I believe restriping is critical and the funds for this project should not be eliminated from the budget. Graham Bisdee. The park is one of Cape Charles' 3 greatest assets, the beach, the park, and the harbor, both to residents and our many visitors. One is constantly hearing so many positive comments from both. I would encourage the council to add the replacement of the zip line to the budget. The capital project to restripe the parking spaces on Mason Avenue is not a necessity at this time. I would also like to comment on the lack of funding towards the very popular Central Park annual summer concert program. Obviously, at present with COVID-19, the concerts are not positive. However, it would be nice to get some support from the council for Central Park towards possibly holding some concerts with social distancing if necessary at the end of the season when everyone will be ready to feel somewhat normal again. Debbie Markwith, 300 Fulcher Street. I participated in the public discussion on Reverse the Reverse to eliminate the rear angle parking on Mason Avenue. All of town has been eager to see the council's decision of last year implemented. Please make this a priority expenditure in the budget and do not reallocate it to other purposes. Jenny Orr, 121 Strawberry Street. I encourage the Cape Charles Town Council to add the replacement of the Cape Kids Playground zip line at $14,000 to the budget and to defer the repainting of parking spaces on Mason Avenue at $15,000 to keep the proposed budget balanced. As a mother of 3, I spent lots of time watching my before it was closed, mentioned how much their kids enjoyed it and how it was a very beloved part of the playground. Both residents and visitors love the zip line and we would love to see it back in the playground soon. One second, let me let Carrie Shackelford into the meeting. Okay. Mary Parr, owner of Focus Optical Boutique. We are Focus Optical Boutique located at 232 Mason Avenue here in Cape Charles. We would like to state emphatically that we, the town, need the parking situation corrected as soon as possible. Tourist season has just begun and already we have personally seen multiple incidents caused by people attempting to back into parking spaces. This issue was voted on and budgeted for and has been delayed for far too long. To divert the funds set aside for this project to replace a zip line on a playground that is not used by the majority of the citizens would be ridiculous. As a business owner and taxpayer, we would like to see the dangerous parking issue resolved immediately. Julie Jones at 538 Monroe Avenue. First of all, I want to thank Mayor Dyes, the town council, and the town manager and his for their service to this special town, especially during this extraordinarily difficult time. You are having to balance the needs of the business community and the needs of the residents, which requires the wisdom of Solomon. One of the wonderful attributes of Cape Charles is how child-friendly it is. With the prevalence of childhood obesity in part brought about a lack of physical activity, Cape Charles offers many opportunities for children to be out of doors. With this in mind, I would request that you consider restoring the zip line in the playground, especially if this can be done by postponing the restriping of Mason Avenue, thereby incurring no additional impact to the budget. Thank you all so very much. Cape Charles is truly blessed to have you representing it. Mark Ussery said, this is a follow-up to a memo written and read at the January meeting of Town Council. I again would like to request an update on the two items I asked the town to do in that letter. One, replace the bench with a dedication plaque on the bench to Ken A. Cutler. Two, locate or have remade the storyboards that were replaced around town and with proceeds of a Chesapeake Bay Gateways grant, specifically those storyboards on the following: the railroad, the passenger ferry, architecture, meteor, and perhaps adding storyboards on watermen, sustainability, and perhaps others. This memo includes some new questions and requests. One, I would like to see a copy of the bid and responsibilities for the entity that is to take care of the park. What are they responsible to do? I've asked for this from the former town manager at least twice and have yet to receive it, hoping I don't need to file a FOIA request. Two, the reason I ask is because A, the jasmine must be trimmed by someone who knows what they're doing. It is taken over and will kill the crepe myrtles. It also just needs a good professionally done haircut. B, the flower bed between the fountain and the roses on the west end needs some plants in it. C, the beds at the north and south entrances to the park need to be reworked. D, the bed at the east end of the park needs to be reworked where the architectural storyboard is located. E, the beds and the trees need new mulch. 3, what is the budget for replanting and taking care of the park annually? 4, when will the fountain be working again? Our town has 4 public jewels: the park, the beach, Mason Avenue, and the harbor. Those jewels are looking a bit casually maintained at this point. I appreciate all the hours that those working on Mason Avenue efforts to replant, the new banners, etc. And I have put in my share of hours over the years on a number of projects. With that in mind, I would like to ask the town and citizens for Central Park to each provide up to $1,000, and I will raise or donate another $1,000. The $3,000 will be used to buy new plants for the beds I have mentioned. I respectfully ask that this request be approved tonight. The week of June 8 and 15, unless someone tells me no, I will weed those beds I have mentioned. Anyone who wants to join me weeding is welcome to do so. I hope that the beds and trees may then be mulched ASAP. With the money commitment from town and the park board and my personal pledge, I will buy the plants, plant them, and keep them watered until June 27th. Anyone else who wants to join in on the planting is welcome. I will coordinate keeping the plants watered into the fall to ensure they get a good start. One final request: I understand that tonight the town council has the option to either reinstall the zip line in the children's playground or repaint stripes on Mason Avenue. Is the state not responsible for doing that since it's a state highway? Given that the price of each is about the same, please reinstall the zip line. The lines, while important, can wait. My sincere thank you to each of you who serve on council, our town employees who do such a wonderful job, and so many others in this community that make this town what it is, a great place to visit, live, and to be. Thank you for your time and your response. Aaron Foster. Regarding Central Park, we believe this is a major benefit provided by the town to both full-time residents and tourists. Unfortunately, the zip line has been broken for a while now. I know we are not alone, having discussed it with several members, in thinking it should be repaired. I would question the bids, and they seem absolutely ridiculous. You could build a 5-story high, 200-foot zip line for about $10,000. We might want to revisit our negotiation strategies. Thomas McKnight. One, Governor Northam just announced the reopening of all Virginia beaches beginning tomorrow, Friday, May 29th. Recently, short-term renters began returning to Cape Charles. Ideally, this will mean increased revenues for the town and businesses, but this will most assuredly mean that more families will be in town and more kids will be going to the playground. Time to reinstall the zip line. I have grandchildren who were born in Nassauatics, but whose family has moved away. Whenever they visit, they head for the park. The last 3 times in town, they have been disappointed to see that the zip line is still missing. Time to put it back up. 2, Central Park and its concerts are central to the identity of Cape Charles. Treasure and support this institution beyond cutting the grass. 3, while we all want to return to normal, rates of cases and deaths are high in Northampton, even if the raw numbers are small. Continue your efforts to keep the town healthy. Sharon Moreland, 131 Churchill Downs. I own a home in Cape Charles. As a taxpayer, I strongly object to reinstalling the zip line at the children's playground. I am a retired 39-year veteran elementary public school teacher. I am very familiar with children's playground habits. It is the town's best interest not to reinstall the zip line. That piece of equipment is extremely dangerous, as many accidents have occurred in many regions while children as well as adults are using it. Camps in our area of the Shenandoah Valley have zip line participants sign legal waivers before getting on the zip line. Zip lines are closely supervised by a paid employee. Accidents still occur with the line itself or with improper use, even with supervision. Insurance for Cape Charles should increase with the amount of liability for a zip line. Are you willing to let a child or an adult be injured on a zip line? Are you willing to have the zip line supervised and waivers signed? A child can get injured on any piece of playground equipment, but a zip line is one where more serious injury can occur. Roxanne Ward. I am a business owner in Cape Charles, and I have a question and a comment to be read to council, but would like to start by saying that your hard work during the COVID-19 pandemic has not gone unnoticed or unappreciated. First, my question is in regards to the restriping on Mason Avenue to eliminate back-in parking. We reopened our shop a couple of weeks ago, and even though the town is not fully opened up, we have already witnessed several close calls. I thought eliminating back-in parking had already been decided by council after all the public comments regarding safety, but I recently heard that the funds for the restriping may be removed from the budget. I hope this is not the case, as this is a valid safety issue in need of attention on Mason Avenue daily. I am asking that you please do not sacrifice the safety on Mason Avenue by removing these funds. Second, I have a comment regarding the Parsons Building, Loja's condos. Being born and raised in Cape Charles, I have a deep connection and love for the historic buildings in town, mainly on Mason Avenue. I'm so glad to see life given back to the Parsons Building instead of sitting in ruin and being seen as an eyesore. I have been watching the activity and trying to imagine what the renovations might look like compared to the memories I have as a child in that building and the cold industrial styles of others I have seen. Just recently, I was given the opportunity to take a tour. I was pleasantly surprised by the light, airy feel combined with the touch of elegance in these condos. It is such a compliment to this building and far beyond what I expected to see. I have always loved the details on this building and was made aware that the current windows may have to be removed and replaced with the wooden windows. I am not a historian by any sense of the word, and I have tried to understand why this might be necessary. If these windows change the look and personality of the building, I would totally agree. However, I can't see the difference. Not only does the clean, crisp, white line of these windows bring life to the facade, they are maintenance-free and are more economical for the resident. Painted wood windows would be attractive for only a short time since they face the salt air and winds from the water, not to mention the lack of insulation protection from freezing winter winds. As I look at the changes made to the other historic buildings in town, I feel like I must be missing something. Could you please explain and help me understand why these windows are an issue? Thank you for your time and consideration. Diane D'Amico. I would like to address 2 issues. 1, 209 Mason Avenue. Not only should this builder pay a penalty for intentionally installing the incorrect windows, he should also be held responsible for removing them and installing the approved windows. He had the opportunity to appeal the required windows within 30 days of the decision being made. He took a gamble that once they were installed, he would not be required to replace them. If they are permitted to remain, then not only has he knowingly flouted the decision of both the Historic District Review Board and the Town Council, he has also installed windows for which no review or approval has been given. Either a $5,000 penalty and the windows be replaced, or a $50,000 penalty and the town will use the money to replace the windows when the town schedule permits. 2, 2020 budget. I am against replacing the zip line in Central Park in lieu of repainting Mason Avenue to permit front-end parking. In a town where the population is overwhelmingly over 55 and who overwhelmingly approve the front-end parking, I do not see that a zip line for children is in the best interest of Cape Charles citizens. As a member of the parking committee who worked long hours on this topic, I would be unhappy that my efforts and those of my fellow committee members was so easily disregarded. Thank you for your attention. Terry Carney and Nancy Cardone, 1 American Court. This letter is in support of the renovation and revitalization of the Parsons Building, 209 Mason Avenue as is. We have seen this project develop from the first day, and I'm amazed at the transformation in keeping with the original appearance of the building. Would hope that you and members of the City Council have availed yourself to see this beautiful work for living spaces. The project is certainly unique from the interior perspective and still retains the look from when the building was originally built. This is another cornerstone project that we should be proud to have in Cape Charles. Steve Smith from CC Ryder Rentals. Good day. I'm writing this in support of Mr. Meyer and his rehab of the Parsons Building, of which my great uncle had built in the early 1900s. Pertaining to the use of fiberglass windows that have the same look as wooden sash windows with the added longevity in our coastal salt environment, especially when these windows start at 18 feet above ground, sidewalk level. Common sense needs to prevail within the review board's criteria. Rebecca Bowers. As buyers of a unit in the Parson Building, we do not feel that the requirement for wooden windows is necessary to preserve the historical appearance of the building. While viewing from outside of the building, it is virtually impossible to tell what type of replacement windows were used. The additional benefit of energy efficiency and ease of care are positive attributes for condo living. As individuals who value restored architecture, we feel that this feature does not detract from the intent to showcase this wonderful property. Christina Carollo, 407 Randolph Avenue. This is in support of the appeal in front of the Historic District Review Board of Mr. Danny Mayer, who is renovating the Logias condos in the Parsons Building. After walking down Mason Avenue and stepping on the opposite side of the street to take a look at the fiberglass windows, I do believe they do not detract from the overall appearance of the building. Michael Bowers, he sent in 2 and asked them both to be read. While vacationing here in September 19th through 23rd, staying at the Cape Charles Hotel while walking east on Mason Avenue, we noticed a poster of condos being built in the Parsons Building. We returned home to Ashland, Virginia, and after short consideration, decided to inquire into the purchase of same. So we put our house on the market, reserved the condo, and moved here on January 21st. We have been waiting since then to move in. This window matter delays our whole purpose of coming here to be part of a nice, friendly, and safe town. I don't feel the material used in the window should delay the folks wanting to live here permanently from doing so. I appreciate your concern on this matter and hope that it will be decided soon. So in addition to my previous email, we sold our home to move here. My wife's family is from here, Eastern Shore / Onancock. His existing buildings are maintenance-free, energy-saving, unnoticeable from the sidewalk across the street. Wood windows require maintenance, aren't easy to clean, nor do they save energy. Existing windows.
We lost you, Libby.
Sorry, we keep losing the feed. Stuart Smith. I read the record of the project at 209 Mason. To say I'm concerned is an understatement. You don't have to have a degree in planning or architecture to see that the clear requirements of the Historic Review Board in requiring the developer to provide drawings and other requirements attached to the certificate of appropriateness. The mea culpa of the developer claiming that he didn't understand or thought he was doing the right thing in installing non-compliant windows is an insult to the citizens of this town. Like many who proceed and then beg for forgiveness, his pleas are without merit in my view. His claim that to do what was required in the first place has an exorbitant price to do the change. Too bad. Due diligence on the part of the developers is their responsibility. His further claim that he would not have proceeded with the project if he knew HDRB requirements is a threat that has no standing regardless of the level of investment. We have a wonderful town and we want to encourage investment, and there has been a lot of discussion of the processes of the HDRB, and positive changes have moved us forward. I support flexibility when it is in the scope and doesn't violate the clear intent of our historic district requirements. Whether the council agrees to sustain the HDRB and require the developer to install the required historic materials or overrule the clear requirements of the HDRB in this matter, I do not offer an opinion, but the reason we have a historic district is a clear mandate from the residents that we find this an important element of our culture and history. Regardless of council's decision, I believe that the developer should be fined appropriately according to the code for the violations that, in my opinion, were willful and disrespectful of our governance. From Marianne Ballou. I, Marianne Ballou, as an elderly woman purchasing unit 201 in the Logias, do not want wooden windows in my condo. This will be my primary residence, and I do not want to have to deal with ongoing maintenance in the future, particularly at my age, especially being 2 stories up in height. Will make maintenance unnecessarily costly, burdensome, and dangerous to maintain. Thank you for your time and consideration. LD Davis, 112 Peach Street. I'm writing to you regarding 209 Mason Avenue and the appeal that you will be considering this evening. The applicant, Mr. Mayor, has been diligently trying to rehabilitate the Parsons Building for more than a year. During that period of time, there have been changes to the membership of the HDRB. Both the town planner and town manager left to pursue other opportunities, and pre-application meetings came into being. With the changing cast of characters and revised format, the road has been difficult and fraught with twists and turns for the applicant. It's time to level the playing field. Mr. Mayor has taken an iconic building on Mason Avenue that was an eyesore and returned it to its formal beauty. As a part of that process, there will be condominiums, including an ADA accessible unit, retail space that will add to the quality of life in our town and significant financial benefit to the town as well. While there is a process for approval and many words written to explain the rules and regulations, the missing element seems to be the environmental impact and energy efficiency. We live within an area with an extremely sensitive ecosystem, and we should think carefully about the materials that are used in restoring properties around town. Historic features can be retained with the use of modern day products. The windows in question are 18 foot or higher off the ground. By their own admission, the HDRB has stated that the vast majority of people would be unable to determine if the windows were wood or man-made. I would encourage our mayor and town council to vote in the applicant's favor. Robert Suppa, 112 Peach Street. I would first like to say that America's habit of using wood for exterior trim is coming to an end. Inexpensive lumber is great for framing and interior projects as it is protected from the weather. Using wood for decorating the exterior of a home these days is like having wood tires on a car. They will last a little while, but the expense of maintaining, protecting, and eventually replacing a porous natural fiber product is huge. Those synthetic rubber tires are looking pretty good right now, at least to me. Manufacturers of exterior building products have gone to great expense to gear up and produce a multitude of composite exterior trim, so detailed and intricate that not only does it replicate the look and feel of historic types of exterior trim, it far exceeds the performance and durability of wood. I repair exterior trim for folks and they always ask me to use PVC as replacement material. I know Mr. Mayor, who purchased the property at 209 Mason Avenue. I have worked for him. He has a lot invested in Cape Charles and he doesn't skimp on quality. I heard that the HDRB wants him to remove the new windows that were installed on his building, not because they appear to be historically inaccurate, but because the exterior trim portion is a composite material. I thought the HDRB made decisions regarding the appearance of historic buildings and home. Am I wrong? I have looked at the property in question. There's nothing historically odd about it. Unfortunately, I did not have my binoculars available to peer up at the windows so I can determine what material was used for the trim. This sounds ludicrous, I know, but forcing folks to use wood for exterior trim applications is like ignoring the fact that tires are made of rubber now. I so cling to the hope that reason and logic will prevail over the dogmatic principles and practices that are now in place. From Richard Barrett and Carrie Setliff Barrett, 209 Mason Avenue, Unit C. My husband and I have purchased a unit on Mason Avenue in Cape Charles, Unit 3C. It has been brought to our attention that there is a possibility that all windows may be required to be replaced with wood windows. These units are being purchased costly, high, and Pella windows which meet the high expectations of the purchasers. Wood windows will very quickly become a costly maintenance issue for this wonderfully appointed building. A quality vinyl window will last for more than 20 years. The budget for the condo association is designed to accommodate vinyl windows, not wood windows. Additionally, vinyl windows will save money on energy bills as the insulation in the frame of the window itself is energy efficient. Vinyl windows require no maintenance as they never need painting or scraping. This will enhance the visual of the town versus windows with ongoing maintenance requirements, scaffolding and painting, not to mention the potential risk of injury to foot traffic, etc. The building also has handicap units, and wood windows would be burdensome and potentially dangerous to folks who may be unable to reach the windows for maintenance needs. This is a poor overall decision which will diminish the value of the units rather than enhance them. L. Barrett Cree, 114 Pine Street. First, let me say thank you for finding unorthodox methods of continuing to make yourself in these meetings available to your constituents through social media platforms. I wish you all well and safe in these difficult times for our town. I appreciate you allowing me to share my concerns on how the Historical Review Board has approached their duties in implementing National Historic Guidelines onto certain projects and dismissing the longstanding town's historic guidelines, which so many of these citizens have been able to utilize and implement previously. The HRB over the last year and a half has held this project to the National Historical Guideline standard, which serves as a strict guideline only when a tax credit is involved, which is not the case here. This is not a historical renovation. This is an adapt and reuse of what had been an eyesore of a building to the town for years. Remember the yogurt store coming soon. That is no longer a standing structure. That much how this building sat for years. Finally, someone had the nerve to step up and invest in this building, creating living place in ADA housing, as well setting restriction on vacation rentals to create a full-time residence community for the town. I believe this project has been more in keeping to the building, leaving the building's exterior appearance unchanged to the eye. I believe this project and Mr. Mayor's investment will serve the town well for many years. I cannot point to any other Mason Avenue building renovation project that has been more in keeping to its original appearance than what has occurred here at the Parsons Building. Current purchasers who were drawn to this project for its historical charm are all opposed to removing the current maintenance-free fiberglass windows and replacing with the same exact looking window, now with high maintenance. If it is appearance that is of concern, hands down, a fiberglass window wins versus.
We lost you, Libby. Libby? There she is.
Okay.
Ah, she's back.
Okay, let's see. 222. So if it's an appearance of concern, hands down, huh? I don't know where that is. Okay, versus wooden windows requiring scraping, sanding, and painting. Somehow, practicality does not seem to be considered in the HDRB approach and decision related to these windows, which are 2 and 3 stories high. A person could not even distinguish the difference between fiberglass or wood at that height. It seems hard to believe we are even here discussing whether high-quality windows should be replaced with inferior, high-maintenance windows, which set up costly and needlessly dangerous scenarios of scaffolding, ladders, and workers going up 2 and 3 stories high, above foot traffic over our sidewalk. In my opinion, accepting the HDRB ruling goes completely against the town's historical guidelines in this instance. Lastly, I'd like to say Mr. Mayor has made every effort to fulfill his promise to this town and has delivered a product this town and residents can be proud of. Please listen to the residents purchasing these condos. Please vote yes and approve Mr. Mayor's appeal and support this project. And we have one from David Kabler. It says, please accept my advice to reverse Historic District Review Board demand for wooden windows in the Parsons Building renovation project. It's all about the look, so if the modern windows presently installed look like historic windows and are better maintained, please bear with the leniency. It makes total sense. I have, this one is from Lindsay Cassida. It says, first, I'd like to express my appreciation to each of you for your service to Cape Charles. I am writing to inquire of plans, if any, by our town's representatives to submit a proposal to our state leaders to open the Cape Charles Public Beach. I'll admit at times I've been confused by some of Governor Northam's announcements and directives, having been under the impression all beaches would be opening on or about June 10th. However, seeing Virginia Beach successfully submit a plan to open their beaches prior to Memorial Day weekend has left me wondering the intentions of our town representatives regarding the opening of the beach. Is the town's leadership developing a plan to submit to Governor Northam? What proactive measures are being taken? Seeing quotes such as this in Eastern Shore Post are disheartening to say the least. The town has not been able to stop visitors to date. What we've done so far is slowed it down as best we could. We tried to make the town as uninviting as possible to guests by closing public facilities such as restrooms, parks, and the fishing pier. As a member of the Cape Charles community, it embarrasses me to see such blatant lack of hospitality. This attitude also causes me great concern for our businesses, restaurants, and lodging facilities who need responsible tourism to stay afloat. On the same thread, seeing a large beach closed sign on 13 is infuriating and misleading. The beach is restricted, not closed. To be clear, I am 100% in support of necessary means to stop the spread of sickness, such as masks and social distancing. I do recognize the fears and concerns of town residents. However, I am extremely worried for the future of the town's economy if one of the friendliest beach towns in America continues with the current unfriendly attitude toward guests. Our family owns a second home vacation rental property at 606 Washington Avenue. Without question, we canceled all spring rentals prior to the town's voluntary request. We watched the town create an ordinance prohibiting rentals, later rescinded. We have not yet voiced concerns over our town representatives' actions, as we have concurred with the necessity. As we ventured into town little by little, we have worn our masks. We have kept distance from others. We have made purchases in town we rarely make at home, simply to support local businesses and restaurants. We now come forward to ask for leadership in opening the beach as well as other town facilities, pier once repaired, tennis courts, and park. In summary, I believe individuals should be given the opportunity to socially distance themselves at the beach and the fishing pier, on the tennis courts, and at the park, all outdoor locations. My family and I have watched all town council Facebook Live meetings, and we will continue to do so with hopes this issue will actively be addressed by our leadership. We very much appreciate the time and attention you give to the town. We have grown to love just as much, if not more, than our primary hometown. Susan Gay. My husband and I have lived in Cape Charles for over 5 years. We love our town, businesses, people, and natural beauty. I am asking that at a minimum, our public beach remain closed for another month. This will enable everyone to assess the facts after 5 weeks of reopening. As I read this email, Virginia case numbers are on the upswing once again. I believe it would be irresponsible to open up such a public facility of which all of the out-of-towners will visit stores, restaurants, parks. They will spread cases to our town of Cape Charles. I would guess there is a large portion that come from surrounding states, which is even more detrimental in waiting it out to assess cases after a few more weeks. This is not a time to worry about freedoms, what's fair or not, or just complain about rules. We should all be focused on this critical health emergency, if only for a few more weeks. Thanks for listening. And Jen's gonna read one that came in through Facebook. You wanna
Comes from Melinda Blanchard. I live in Eastville and have a rental unit in Cape Charles. I personally didn't know anything about a zip line in the park. The parking is a problem. Backing in, especially during the busy times, is difficult with increased traffic in town. Backing up with people in your tail is difficult, if not impossible. I'm not sure who thought of what exists, but it wasn't brilliant in my opinion. I believe that kids need activities. The zip line could be replaced along possibly with the recreation of a decent skateboard park. Excellent exercise for kids.
Okay, that's all the public comments.
Thank you so much, Miss Libby. That was a lot.
Half an hour.
We're going to move on to the special meeting order of business. Item 4A is adoption of the fiscal year 2021 budget. I'm going to, I can't see everybody's face, so basically it's going to be the same setup We'll get a motion. We'll get a second. Then we'll have discussion. Just say Bennett or Buckholz or whatever if you want to speak before you speak, so we're not overstepping on each other, please. But anyway, item 4A, adoption of the fiscal year 2021 budget. Mr. Hosey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council met on April 30th to go over this budget and in work session. And we discovered at that time that the COVID-19 effect has had a pretty detrimental impact on the next fiscal year. Although even after we've cut over $260,000 out of the budget, it's still left a hole of over $320,000, which we proposed that we fund with reserves, fund balance. That is not a sustainable approach, and therefore we recommended that the council approve this budget as an interim step, and then we go ahead and reevaluate this whole proposal again in September after we see exactly what season we get and what our primary revenues are going to look like. That proposal went forward to public hearing on May 21st, and now is now before you for adoption. As the mayor said, should any of you wish to make amendments to this budget, we just need you to put the motion to adopt on the floor first. Then you can amend if you like, and then when all amendments are done, call for call for vote on the main motion to adopt. Staff recommends approval of the budget in its current form.
I make a motion that we adopt the budget for fiscal year 2021.
Second.
I'll second that.
All right, we got a motion from Vice Mayor Bennett, a second from Councilman Buckholz for Resolution 20200528, approving the budget for fiscal year FY 2020-21 and making appropriations for the fiscal year. Whereas the Council of the Town of Cape Charles has prepared a budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 pursuant to Section 15.2-2503 of the Code of Virginia, and whereas the budget has been advertised and a public hearing has been held pursuant to Section 15.2-2506 of the Code of Virginia. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Town Council of Cape Charles this 28th day of May 2020 that the budget fiscal year 2020/2021 be approved as follows. Total revenues from all funds, $6,089,976. Total expenditures for all funds, $6,089,976. The following tax rates and user fees are established. Vehicle tax, $31 per vehicle, subject to Virginia state registration. Trailer, $18. Golf cart decals for $31. Real estate, 0.2731 per hundred. Personal property tax, $2 per hundred. Boat tax, 1 penny per hundred. Trans occupancy tax, 3.7% monthly. Meals tax, 5% monthly. Emissions tax, 3% quarterly. Short-term rental tax, 1% quarterly. Water rate, residential, 0 to 2,000 gallons, $32.94 minimum. 2001 to 5,000 gallons, $2.63 per 1,000 gallons. 5,001 gallons to 10,000 gallons, $3.75 per 1,000 gallons. 10,001 to 15,000 gallons, $5 per 1,000 gallons. Over 15,000 gallons, $7.50 per 1,000 gallons. Commercial, 0 to 2,000 gallons, $32.94 minimum. 2001 to 10,000 gallons, $2.50 per 1,000 gallons. 10,001 gallons to 15,000 gallons, $3.75 per 1,000 gallons. Over 15,000 gallons, $5 per 1,000 gallons. Wastewater rate, residential, 0 to 2,000 gallons, $62 minimum. 2001 to 5,000 gallons, $4.11 per 1,000 gallons. 5,001 gallons to 10,000 gallons, $5.85 per 1,000 gallons. 10,001, 15,000 gallons, $7.80 per 1,000 gallons. Over 15,000 gallons, $11.70 cents per 1,000 gallons. Commercial, yeah, okay. Trash collection fees, $14.87 per month. Be it further resolved that pursuant to section 15.2-2506 of the Code of Virginia, funds are appropriated from all sources of revenue for expenditures during the period of July the 1st, 2020 through June the 30th, 2021. General fund, $3,135,548. Sanitation fund, $220,274. Harbor fund, $785,167. Wastewater fund, $1,948,987. And that the town manager is authorized to transfer among funds with the balance notification to the town council. Any discussion?
Can we make an amendment to the budget? Chris?
You can, so we have a motion to adopt. the
I'll make amend the draft budget to make sure that the, for $14,000 that the zip line will be in the Central Park.
Any discussion on that, Vice Mayor Bennett?
We need a second. We need a second.
Excuse me?
We need a second.
You're blurring.
Yeah, I'll second that. And I'll be more specific to really take the funds from the fund balance. I'm not going to take the reverse monies.
We got a motion to amend the budget. We got a second to amend the budget and not switch pull the reverse angle parking funds out. So with that being said, where are we gonna come up with $14,000?
I had said come from the fund balance. We've already borrowed $307,000, and we know that's not sustainable. But to get over the particular issue here, I'd say take the $14,000 from fund balance and add it to the 307.
All right.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So just to clarify the motion so everyone understands it, this involves two changes to the budget. An expenditure line item that would increase the capital budget by $14,000 for the zip line. It would also increase the transfer from the fund balance to the general fund in the same amount. So those are the two components of this motion, just so everyone understands.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now that would leave the budget balanced. It would just leave the fund balance a little bit lower.
That's
All
right.
So that was the motion. We've got a motion to amend the budget within the motion. We got a second to amend the motion. All right, so I'm gonna do a roll call vote on the amendment. Woman Holloway.
Wait a minute, I'd like to have some discussion before we vote.
Okay, all right, yes, sir. Go ahead, Vice
So-
Mayor Bennett.
All right, so I appreciate the fact that, let me start by saying, I've been on council for 12 years. I don't think we've ever had this many public comments, and it's interesting that we've had so many on something like a zip line or reverse angle parking striping. So my position was made known during the discussions on the budget that I was in favor of not changing the striping on Mason Avenue. However, I was overruled on that. So that item is in the budget. As one of the commenters said, new paint can wait until the revenue improves. My position is a zip line can wait until the revenue improves also. I see absolutely no reason to install a zip line at this point in time. We're going to review the budget in September. If things have changed dramatically enough to get us out of this hole we're in, then I think then we can obviously readdress the zip line at that point in time. The restriping is in the budget. It's been okayed by everybody other than me. So now that it's been okayed, I'm okay with it too. So I don't want to change that. But I'm totally opposed to this frivolous expenditure, whether we take it from the fund balance or whether we take it from anywhere. I think it's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would like to comment before I ask for any other comments. I want to say I kind of agree with Vice Mayor Bennett. Our staff has worked hard to bring a balanced budget. There's needs and there's wants. Our citizens and our business needs has been at us for this. I mean, before I was elected, of restriping the roads. That's been something that's been going on way before I was elected as mayor. That was something that I ran on. We would push to get this through. I'm not in favor of changing the budget as presented. Mr. Hosey, Ms. Pocock, all the staff has worked their tail off to get us where we're at on this budget right now, and to have them go back and start doing paperwork and redo it before it's presented and advertised. I'm not in favor of it. So that's where I stand on it. I'm not in favor of switching anything around. So, Councilman Buckholz,
No, my comment is the reverse angle parking's been waiting for 3 years. And I'm with Steve 100% on this. Right now, budget's tight, and to me, it's a very, very, very frivolous. Unless this zip line is going across the entire park, I agree with the one comment. They need to do a little bit more research than spending $14,000 on a 50-foot zip line. It's crazy.
Councilwoman Holloway, you're muted.
Tammy, you're
Councilwoman
muted.
Holloway, you're muted.
Gotcha. I wanted to make a clarification because everybody, I think in general, the general public thinks we're just repainting lines. And the restriping is not repainting lines, it's reversing the whole direction of parking, which was studied and community input and voted and moved forward. So it's a non sequitur as far as comparing the two. I think it would be great to have a zip line replaced in the park. And I appreciate everybody's comments, much like Councilman Bennett said, it's been great to have that feedback. But just as I'm making my own hard decisions in my business and at home, you have to cut things that are extras. And the staff did a phenomenal job of presenting a balanced budget to us and cutting things that could be put forward later. And I want to support that. I think it would be really irresponsible to support a somewhat frivolous kind of expense at this point when it can be done later. And it's not something that was essentially voted on and then turned on in the end. Thank you.
Councilman Farmer?
Actually, I think that's been covered. I just agree with what's been said.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second to the amendment. We'll vote on that first by roll call, and then we'll go back to the original motion and the second by Vice Mayor Bennett and Councilman Buckholz on the passing of the resolution. So roll call vote. We'll start with Vice Mayor Bennett.
No.
Councilman Bannon.
Yes.
Councilman Buckholz.
No.
Councilman Grossman.
Yes.
Councilman Farmer.
No.
Councilman Holloway.
No.
4-2, the amendment to the budget failed. Thank you all very much. Now we'll go back to the original motion and second. Do we have any discussion further on the motion and second of adoption of the budget 2020-0528? Hearing no other further discussion, we'll take a roll call vote. Councilman Farmer.
Yes.
Councilman Buckholz.
Yes.
Councilwoman Holloway.
Yes.
Councilman Grossman.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bennett.
Yes.
Councilman Bannon.
Yes.
Let it be noticed unanimous that the resolution 2020-0528 was adopted by council. by the Town Council of Cape Charles on May the 28th, 2020. Up next. Get to my agenda. Sorry, I'm scrolling. Appeals of the Historic District Review Board's decision on 209 Mason Avenue. Mr. Grossman.
Okay, there's a lot of material that was submitted that really accompanied all the particular meeting agenda items, but I'm just going to really limit to the appeal aspects pertaining to the upper southern facade windows. This particular applicant has probably met with the Historic District Review Board more times than any other. But back in May of 2019, the original proposal was for the existing windows to be removed and lined with wood furnished to match the existing wood floors. So in essence, the glass was being removed, and that caused a lot of conversation at that particular meeting, and the board unanimously voted to defer it to a further meeting. There was a June special meeting where, again, they discussed the new window casing surrounding the existing masonry openings, and they couldn't conclude on what was appropriate and denied the application for the certificate of appropriateness at that particular time. A couple weeks later, in June of 2019, again, the applicant had come back and said the existing wood windows and frames, which are in disrepair, are proposed to be replaced by new wood windows casings. And that, in a sense, was approved by the board, along with the need or the conditions that shop drawings of the windows were required, along with doors and a couple other things. So a certificate of appropriateness was issued with these particular conditions associated with it. In March of 2020, it came to our awareness that windows had been replaced. And that was contrary to the condition that the board imposed on the COA. And therefore, a meeting was held with the applicant, and a subsequent meeting was held with the Historic District Review Board in March of 2020, where the applicant had indicated that fiberglass composite material was actually installed. The application was rejected by a 2-to-1 vote, and they had listed out the particular issues within the historic guidelines that they based their decision on. We have an appeal letter, obviously, from Mr. Meyer that's attached, and he'll discuss that. So there's two things really that are in front of the council now. One is the actual appeal to the windows, and the second action is to determine the enforcement actions which the town staff has proposed as a recommendation. So that's really all I wanted to present.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Grossman, Mr. Mayor, thank you for this meeting today. Mr. Grossman, you're correct in almost all of it, except on the application for conditionally approved. Yes, there were to be wood windows. The application was allowed to open the windows in its entirety. In other words, they could open up and out, fold up and out, and create a complete opening. The original concept of this logia's design was to take the windows out completely and create an exterior wall within the building and create an inside veranda loggia, as it were. The windows serve no purpose as to the windows, its function itself. So the idea of the loggia came about in the design, and that was what was put forward in the first applications. And that was what was discussed. It seemed at the time that the most critical thing was the loss of the horizontal visual appearance of a sash window if I took those windows out. There was even discussion of just putting a bar across there at one time in the earlier discussions, and then it progressed further that they didn't like that, but they would approve to open a window that would open out completely. And I was to provide shop drawings for those wooden windows. When I was going through the process of this construction, it seemed to me that it was, while I appreciated the, I guess the flexibility, that was the only flexibility that I'd had of that review board at that time. Everything else that I'd asked for had been denied. It appeared to me that if half the residents kept their windows closed and half the residents kept their windows open, you'd have some windows that would have no appearance of sash because they would be opened completely up and out. Some of them might be half opened. Others might be completely closed. So you'd have this mishmash of a mix of windows and open and closed, and it wouldn't give the appearance that the board was looking for. I did make an error in not submitting shop drawings for windows that I installed, but I installed sash double hung windows that was the appearance of what was there in the first place. I honestly believe, despite what Mr. Stuart Smith feels that I was disrespectful to the board in installing these windows, I truly and honestly believe that I was installing something that the town would have preferred, that the review board would have preferred, because it was sash windows. I put back sash windows. Sash windows came out, I put back. My only crime right now is that they are fiberglass and not wood. And, you know, two crimes. One is I didn't submit the shop drawings. I have done nothing to disrespect anybody. I've done nothing to disrespect the review board. I've done nothing to disrespect this council. It has been implied that I'm a liar, which did hurt me at the last council meeting. I have tried to do everything. In essence of what I initially applied for, none of those things have been approved to me. Any of the modifications that I've tried to make for the storefronts, I was asked to come back several times with different ideas. And what struck me on this last meeting in May, or this last review board meeting that I had, was that every time I made any kind of application, the Secretary of State's guidelines to historic renovations was read to me, and I was flipped through from one paragraph and one chapter to another. I only wish that in the very beginning, the very first meeting, that somebody had said to me, there is no way that you can make any changes whatsoever to that building, because that's in essence is what I'm being told now. I'm not making any changes to the storefronts. I'm keeping everything the way that it is per several reviews. And that is why when the windows that went in was to match more of what the board wanted in the sash windows, and not the opening up and out, which would have given an appearance of not what they were looking for. So I made a mistake, yes, by not submitting shop drawings to the review board, and I did apologize then. It's not been disrespectful. If it is, I didn't intend that by any means. If you take a look at that building and you look at what was there before, maybe even what it was like originally, I'm sure you'd be hard pressed to see that it's any different today with the windows that are in there now. All I've wanted with this building is to produce a product that the town would like. It seems like most of the town people like what I've done. And it seems like the review board do not like what I've done. It's been a huge investment, even more than I'd anticipated. Being an older building, you run into a lot of areas that you don't expect. I'm way over budget, which is not of your concern, but it's of mine. But I truly did what I did, thinking I was doing the right thing by installing sash windows, which were there in the first place. They're fiberglass and not wood, which if that's the biggest mistake on that whole building, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Shackelford?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody. First of all, Mr. Meyer, I want to assure you that from my standpoint, I never took any disrespect from anything or any, I wasn't offended. I can't speak for the other board members specifically, but I certainly haven't heard that from anybody. This is a process that, you know, sometimes can get a little bit fiery and a little bit heated, but I hope nobody takes any of it personally. I certainly don't. It's a process and we always don't all agree, but that's just the way it is. I assume everybody got the note that I sent in. I don't want to bother to just read that aloud if everybody got it and understands that. Everybody see that?
Yes, that had been made attachment 11 to our package.
Okay. So just a couple of things, Paul, and what you were saying about your description, the conditional approval that was given with a conditional approval and requiring shop drawings because nobody could articulate what was going to happen with these windows. And it had been discussed many, many times that the windows were a chief concern. There were several concerns that we had that this building that items of the architecture of this building be protected. The storefronts and the windows were chief among those. So we offered a lot of alternatives to the applicant about possible ways to modify the windows, but in none of those did we talk about removing the frames of the windows. We talked about the sash and how the sash could be modified. And that's why we asked for shop drawings, because we wanted to be assured that what was done was going to look the way that the guidelines required the building to retain. And the other thing to remember here is it's not about as much about what the building looks like or whether somebody can tell the difference from the ground, what is one thing or what's another thing. It's really about the preservation of that building. Nobody on this board can remember, nobody in the town can remember the details of buildings and elements of buildings that are gone because they're gone and there's nobody around. So those windows now are gone. The details of the trim, the details of the frame, they're gone. So that was the purpose in trying to make sure that they retained as much of the elements of the original structure as possible. So, and that's, Mr. Meyer, your comment about the crime was that you replaced the windows with a different product rather than wood. It wasn't so much about the wood, it's the fact that the windows are now gone. And that's what we were trying to preserve, was the window itself, not so much whether they were wood, fiberglass, or aluminum. The guidelines are very clear about retaining all of the original elements. We also complimented you whenever we got to the end of this process because you had stuck with it. You put diligence into trying to retain the look of the storefronts and retain as many of the original elements to the storefronts as possible. And we still commend you on that. But we're very disappointed that the windows are just gone. And what to do about it now? I mean, that's kind of in the town council's hands. My recommendation would be that the windows be put back. I realize that there are many impracticalities to that, but you really have to balance. I understand you say that it's $50,000 to do that, but if you had just restored those windows, they would have been a cost of about $1,200 to $1,500 a piece. I do this work every day. I looked at those windows beforehand. I went up there and I looked at each one of them. They were all good. They were all restorable.
Well, some of them were missing, Mr. Shackelford, so I don't know how you would have replaced those with any windows that were not there. When I took over that building, there were pieces that were falling out and they became a liability to me and I had to take them out. And there was glass falling out that could have fallen down onto the spaces down below. Some of those windows were powder. Could a couple of them have been restored? Possibly. When we got through part of these discussions, I know in the very, very first meeting that we had, we went through and spoke about the fact that these windows were not restorable, and that we had even discussed the option of taking out the windows and putting in horizontal pieces that would look like the windows. So while there might have been a wish to do that, that was never at the first meeting, it wasn't, you have to do this. There was discussion about what's the windows go. There was even discussion about whether the windowsill was high enough to meet code that people couldn't fall out if the windows came out. So the discussion went further than just restoring windows. There was discussion about when those windows came out, what could we do to make them look like windows that were there. So I do understand the historic requirement that you put forward, but understand too that we discussed the fact that these windows were coming out. The replacement of them was what was in discussion, and that was what couldn't be agreed upon at the time, and that's why it was deferred. It was deferred along with what was going to on two options that I put forward on the storefront, which seemed to be more of an interest of what was going to happen there than the windows that were 18 foot up and that were residential windows. And at the end, nothing is happening on the storefronts down below, and they are being kept the way that they are currently. And at the last conditional approval was drawings that showed clearly windows that would open up or out or sideways to give a completely open appearance. I felt at the time that was a flexibility that had been given to me, but during the construction, as I said, it didn't seem practical to me that if you were really concerned about the horizontal appearance and the reflectiveness of the glass, that you give me an option to open a window completely, and then yet the one next to it can be closed, and you'd have an odd-looking space. I took it upon myself to put sash windows in, thinking I was doing the right thing. And it is my only crime right now is that they're fiberglass and not wood. We didn't discuss there was a discussion at the very first meeting, yes, but we went beyond that to discuss what other options there were when we take these windows out. These are residents.
I disagree with you. We
we'll
never
go back and have a look at
discussed
at the video. It's on there what we discussed. Mr. D'Amico even discussed about the horizontal. Would you be willing to? And there was a pause. There was a moment where the board
talked about modification, but we never discussed.
There was talk about. It was almost a vote on whether to allow that horizontal piece to be installed in lieu of a window. So now you're saying take out these windows and put back wood windows, but you want the original ones put back. Well, there are no original windows there. There weren't. If you take a look.
Mr. Meyer, could I ask a question? How many wood windows have you restored in your career?
I've not restored any wood windows in my career.
I have restored probably in the neighborhood of 10,000.
Well, then it seems
Do you think if I looked at them and I thought they were restored, I would tell you that they weren't?
It seems like it's a conflict of interest then if you're on the Historic Review Board and you're talking about restoring windows.
I didn't suggest that I restore them. I'm trying to tell you. The difference is that an expert
Please
has
hear from
told
the person who has
that
the
the windows
floor.
were restorable.
Everybody, hold on, everybody's cutting.
It's not somebody that's just.
Mr. Shackelford, we had the discussion on the first review board meeting. And if you had told me at that first review board meeting, there's absolutely no way that we're going to allow you to replace the windows, that you have to restore them, then that would have been a different story. I've come back 3 or 4 times. You've asked me to come back with different ideas. I see no point in coming back with different ideas if every time I come back, all you're going to do is read to me the Secretary of State's historic guidelines, which is a guideline for historic renovations for tax credit purposes. Those are the strictest guidelines in the United States. This is an adaptive reuse project. Why ask me to come back with different ideas when you know full well then I'm not going to be given any kind of leeway? I just don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. Why didn't you at the very beginning say to me, you're not going to have an option of not restoring those windows. You're not going to have an option of redoing the storefronts. Why give me false hope that I can come back with some kind of an idea that I can get some kind of storefront that will meet the code, or the window energy that can meet the code. There are residences that are going to live in those spaces, and they're going to have to maintain these windows. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to be practical. The building doesn't look a whole lot different to what it did when it was around in its heyday. I'm trying my best to keep this building looking the way that it does and be practical. I made the mistake of not taking this to the review board and saying, this is what I want to put in lieu of the up and opened windows that you want to give me. I'm putting instead the sash windows that you wanted, which is the horizontal and the glass reflective that you're looking for. I apologize that I didn't submit that as shop drawings. It was my full intention to do what I thought the board and the town wanted.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now I'm going to open it up for council questions to either one of you. I'm going to start with Vice Mayor Bennett. If he's got any questions for either one of Paul or Jeff or Mr. Mayor or Mr. Shackford.
No questions, but I will make a couple of comments. And I think my position is well known with regard to interpretation of the Historic District Review Board guidelines, which they are guidelines. And I seriously think that we need to look quickly at revising those guidelines to allow more modern materials when it is appropriate. In this case, I think it's totally appropriate. I appreciate what Mr. Myers has done for the town of Cape Charles and for Mason Avenue by taking what was a derelict building that was going to wind up eventually in the same condition as the yogurt shop, having to be torn down. And can you imagine the hole in Mason Avenue if that building was gone with the size that it is? So for someone to come in, step up, take that on as a project and do the job that he's done, I think is fantastic. He's given jobs to contractors. He's given homes to people. He's giving businesses to Mason Avenue. I think it's unbelievable that he would do this. Now, on the other side of that coin is the fact that he did disregard the terms of his conditional use. So I think it's fully appropriate that he be penalized for that disregard, whether it was intentional, unintentional, or otherwise. I think that needs to be imposed. So Paul Grossman, I appreciate the complete depth of the report that you gave us. Very long, very detailed, very concise in areas that we needed to review. One of the review members actually said in the documentation that he thought it looked fine. I also think it looks fine. I've been by there, I've seen it, I've got photographs of it. I think the building looks fantastic. The fact that it is going to be less maintenance, I think that's also fantastic. So I'm sorry, but Carrie, I appreciate where you're coming from on this, and I appreciate the difficult job you have to do. But you know, and we've had this discussion on many of these things, that I just think that we need to get a little more relaxed in our interpretation of the guidelines. It's not the fact that we've lost some old rotten wooden windows that perhaps could have been restored. There were plywood in some of those windows. I know that for a fact. So I think based on my read of all of this, based on public comment, based on everything that I can put together, I have to side with Mr. Meyer on this. I think that this appeal should be upheld.
Councilwoman Holloway. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
I am glad to follow Councilman Bennett tonight because I couldn't agree more. The only piece I have to add is that I actually attended probably the first 6 meetings that Mr. Mayor presented before the Historic Review Board, and I can attest to the things that he was saying tonight to be true, and coming back with new ideas and moving forward. I just support everything that Mr. Bennett said. I don't think it needs to be resaid in any way.
Thank you. Councilman Bannon?
No comment.
Councilman Fulmer?
Thank you. Yes, I I agree with what's already been said, but as some background, I'm not a historic preservation expert, but it's an area that I have spent some time and expense on properties that I owned. I think it is very troubling that we are using the criteria for historic tax credits across the board. Everybody knows those are an exceptionally high hurdle, and that is why, frankly, most people don't go for them in using them. Our town is not a museum. It is a living town, and it is our obligation to find a balance between maintaining historic integrity and economic development that preserves these historic gems. Steve Bennett is absolutely correct. That building was headed in the direction of the yogurt bar coming soon. And I absolutely do not condone a return to the days of when I came here 15 years ago when none of the historic guidelines were being enforced and anything went. I'm quite happy to see that we are now all committed to maintaining our historic integrity. But we need to find a reasonable balance where people actually will want to come and invest in restoring these gorgeous old buildings that are an integral part of our character. We cannot sit like reading from a textbook and just say things that, it is not all or nothing. It is not only about preservation of that building. Back to what we think it may or may not have looked like 100 years ago. It's about preserving that building and keeping it alive to the extent that is feasible, historically intact. So I agree exactly with what Steve Bennett said. I do think it was a mistake for Mr. Meyer to proceed intentionally or not. So I'm okay with, a reasonable penalty, but I think it is ridiculous to think that those windows should be taken out and replaced with ones that I agree, I know the building didn't even all exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Farmer. Councilman Buckholz?
I concur with Steve and the rest. I'm not going to go beat a dead horse on this one. Everybody knows how I feel about these guidelines. They're guidelines. They're not etched in stone. So I completely agree.
All right. Councilman Bannon? Councilman Bannon?
I already said. Had no
Oh, you
comment.
did?
Said no comment.
Yep. So I just want to say.
You missed Councilman Grossman.
Councilman Grossman.
Yeah, I'm not one to say he's got to pull these windows out. Mike Strube had a writing comment since he didn't attend the board meeting saying, like, we had another letter here that, hey, a person 18 feet away can't tell the difference, and I'm in that, so I'm not looking for that. But I will want to reiterate that everybody's saying that we have guidelines and they're super flexible or they should be no, they're not super flexible. They're written so that the board is able to use it as criteria to make decisions. And you keep saying, I don't like what the board is doing. Well, you really don't like what the guidelines are saying. Simple as that.
So if I could respond to that, Mr. Mayor, because that's primarily me that's saying that. They are guidelines. I'm not saying that we don't need to have guidelines or we need to change, but I do think they need to be looked at. They need to be brought up to date. I think that the interpretation of guidelines is exactly that, an interpretation. And I think the board's primary responsibility is to try to work with an applicant to the best of their ability to allow them to do what they want to do to a building within the framework of those guidelines. It's not black and white. There is some gray in that.
Councilman Grossman?
I'm not going to respond to that because I already stated what I felt.
I didn't know. All right. So for me, First, I want to say, Mr. Mayor, I want to concur with Vice Mayor Bennett, that what you've done with that building. I've been through that building before you bought it, and it was pretty dilapidated. And I got to say, the open space next door to it, it probably weren't too far from that. I think it was a little structural signed in the other building, but it was still, you had your work cut out. And I do appreciate the fact that you have invested time, a lot of time and a lot of money. So thank you for that. And Councilman Grossman, I do want to thank all the work that you and Jeb and John have done, put this package for this appeal together. And Mr. Shackford, I want to thank the board. It's just a tough spot, and it's working with these. I know he's had to come back to you all, but at the end of the day, I agree with Vice Mayor Bennett's comments on the building. I did think you kind of did something that you didn't bring to the board. I think there possibly should be a fine associated with that, Mr. Mayor. So until we can get the guidelines so they're more clear or whatever. But I do appreciate everybody's involvement in all of this. So thank you all. But that's where I stand. So there's no more comments. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion that we uphold the appeal of this item and that we enact a $5,000 penalty for violation of the certificate of occupancy.
I'll second that.
Councilman Fulmer, I think Councilman Grossman beat you to the punch. So, all right, so we got a motion, we got a second. Any more discussion? There are no other discussion. It's got to be a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilman Fulmer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Holloway.
Yes.
Councilman Buckholz. Councilman Buckholz.
I was on mute. Yes.
Councilman Bannon.
Yes.
Councilman Grossman.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bennett.
Yes.
Well, I know it's unanimous. Thank you all very much. The appeal was upheld with a $5,000 penalty. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Shackford. We appreciate your time as well. Okay, up next, 4C, time management updates. Mr. Hosey, you're on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do I really have to? This has been quite a day. So I had planned, Mr. Mayor, to give you an update on what we talked about last week. Last week, you asked me to start putting together a plan to look at reopening our beach, since we had just learned about what happened with Virginia Beach, and I had spent a fair amount of time on that this week, only to find out just this afternoon, with no notice, that the governor has approved reopening all beaches starting tomorrow, with 1 day notice. That is bad enough, except that when the governor makes these announcements, usually very shortly after the announcement, he places something on his website that is the source of it. Like when he opened up Virginia Beach, about an hour afterwards, there was Executive Order 63 was on his website. And I could look at it and read it and know exactly what it was. I was waiting for another executive order to come out this afternoon that would give us the details of this new policy, and I wasn't finding it. And finally, Councilman Grossman found it literally 1 hour before this meeting, because he didn't put out a new executive order. He went down the list and amended an old executive order, and I wasn't looking down the list. And so what he did is he amended Executive Order 61, and I literally only had an hour to look at it before this meeting. So I don't have a well formulated plan for you right now. But I'm concerned is that with all due respect to the governor, I've worked in the governor's office. I know what he's going through. I don't mean any disrespect to the governor, but these types of things put us in a difficult position. What essentially has happened is before this, he was keeping the beaches closed. So it was on him. He was taking that responsibility. With this order today, he has shifted that burden to us. He has opened up all the beaches, but with a page and a half of restrictions. So before, if we couldn't meet those restrictions, he would look at them and say no. Now he says yes, and it's up to us to implement something that we may or may not be able to. So if we can't, we're going to look bad now. And some of these restrictions are going to be difficult. I mean, just to pick one, we're supposed to take everybody's temperature every morning before they go to work and report that to the health department. That's just one thing. We're going to have to hire full-time staff to man the beach all the time. You have to be cleaning everything every 2 hours. There's lots here that will be difficult for us to implement at all, but impossible for us to implement tomorrow. There's no way I can do it tomorrow. So where does that leave us? So the governor says the beaches are open tomorrow, but do I keep the beaches closed because I can't meet all his requirements? I think we do. I think that's where we are. I think if we can't meet the requirements for opening, we have to stay closed. At least that's my 1 hour read of it. So when I first heard that the governor was opening things up, I called Public Works, said, okay, it must be safe, right? Because we're relying on the governor to tell us when it's safe because we don't have that information. So I said, okay, well, let's get ready. I know we only have 1 day's notice, but let's try to make it happen. We got to get our signs down. We got to get our bathrooms cleaned. We got to get things ready, right? And then I get this list. So I said, whoa, wait, stop. Don't take the signs down yet. I wanted to have this discussion with council, make sure that when we're on the same page here as we move at least into this weekend and then for the rest of the summer. So the plan that I was putting together does not cover everything that's in here. And where some of this might be appropriate for a very large community like Virginia Beach, I really don't think it's appropriate for something as small as Cape Charles. But I don't know what our recourses are. I haven't had a chance to think about it or inquire about it. So it just really puts us in a difficult spot with regard to opening the beaches, especially as soon as tomorrow. It's my inclination, and I certainly welcome your input or direction here, but it's my inclination to leave the beaches closed this weekend while we try to get as close to the requirements that the governor has laid out as possible. I think it would be challenging for us to try to put something together for the weekend after that, but certainly couldn't happen this weekend. Now, that said, there's not a lot of enforcement power behind it that I can see, so we could try to open this weekend and meet as many of these things as we can meet and just have it a work in progress as we try to meet them. That's another approach. And I guess would like to get some of your thoughts on how you would like me to approach this. Anyone?
I'd keep them closed until you get yourself organized, because you're the brains behind the operation.
Okay.
So I'm reading item G in this item G, on Executive Order 61, establish, train, and deploy a team to educate and promote compliance with beach rules and refer cases of noncompliance to public safety personnel. You can't establish and train nothing in 12 hours.
That's exactly right. There's a lot in here we can't do by tomorrow. That's one of them, yes.
We don't have lifeguards.
I agree that we need to have a plan in place to do that. I also, though, think we missed a little bit of the ball game last week by not communicating our discussions and assuming that everybody watched the town council meeting. We have a lot of people who are confused because they heard Virginia Beach is open and they interpreted that as Virginia's beaches. And we were put in a bad spot last week. So I'm not criticizing anyone, but I do think whatever we decide tonight, we have to have communication that goes out immediately in all channels of what that means. And we need to come up with a date that we are going to open the beach and that we work no matter what that takes to get that done. I think people just, there are a lot of people now, in particular rentals, that are hanging on every word of when this is. And I know we want to do it safely and do it right, but we need to come up with, we don't want to follow in the governor's footsteps and kind of doing it last minute and letting people know. So if we can come up and establish a plan now that we have nuggets of something, I think it's certainly worth a call to the governor's office tomorrow to say, okay, we read this amendment to 61. What does that mean for Cape Charles? Because I do think we're different. You know, we have a lot of different situations. Those guidelines are for Buckrow Beach and, you know, Chicks Beach and some of those places. They're not going to pertain to us.
Okay, but looking at the order, the way it's listed, it's saying effective this particular date, these requirements must comply with the below.
That's correct.
So
There's-
obviously some of them
there's no
don't
discretion.
apply, but we must comply with those that should be applicable to us.
I
Right,
haven't
but
seen the document, Paul. I hadn't had success finding it, so I'm at a disadvantage.
I agree with Tammy. I haven't seen the document either. So I want to read the document before I make a statement on what it is we should do. At this moment, we're closed. And until I see what the wording is, I can't offer a real opinion.
I would like
So-
to,
Mr. Hosey, if you have that document, can you forward it to the council, please?
I will. I'll forward it to you as soon as this is over.
Mr. Farmer, I'm gonna just chime in real quick and I'll get to you. But I would like to suggest that maybe Mr. Hosey, we reach back out to Mr. Strickler tomorrow morning and see where they're willing to work with us on this document. So when you do bring something back to we know what the Commonwealth will be able to work with us on this, but it's a lot of stuff. I don't really think after reading, it goes clear down to Q, just so you know, Vice Mayor Bennett. So it's not just one or two items. It's almost a whole alphabet. So I do think we're not prepared to open the beach this weekend. As much as I have, but I don't think we are based on these requirements. And the last thing I want to do is to have the government come in here or the state come in and shut us down until they say it's time to open again. I think we need to look at it and see how they can work with us. So that's all I've got to say, Mr. Fulmer.
Yeah, Anita. Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate that the governor has put us in what is frankly a lose-lose situation for us. I agree with what Tammy said, that what we decide here needs to be communicated properly and immediately, and not expecting people to read it, but I think it'd be worth including or attaching to that communication the 1.5 pages of unmanageable requirements. Because my fear is, the cat's out of the bag. People have been posting the beach is open, some local businesses. People think the beach is open tomorrow morning. And I'm not sure, one, that all those people are going to avail themselves of corrected information before business opens tomorrow. I also worry, we've had some people some even belligerently arguing that people should just go to the beach, defy the order. I worry about our rather small police force being overrun in trying to tell people who think the beach is open that it's not open. So I think we need to be prepared for challenges which hopefully won't materialize. But I think we're going to deal with some ugliness. Not that I'm arguing we should open the beach until we're ready, but I don't think it's going to be an easy weekend.
No, I agree with you, Councilman Fulmer. I don't know. It's kind of a catch-22. We're putting in here that people's going, I mean, they're going to see the governor's open the beach, and they're going to assume it's open, and when they get there, it's closed. And some's going to decide to go on it or not. And I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. It's kind of messed up. The private beaches all around us can be open, and they're fine. They can't catch coronavirus and everything else. And our public beach, our little quarter-mile stretch of beach, is unsafe. I don't get it. I don't understand the logic. Not my place to understand the logic, but that's just, I'm going to say it. And I think it's kind of messed up on the logic on some of the stuff, and I think it's really messed up that we find out today with the rest of the Commonwealth of Virginia that our beaches will be open tomorrow. I think a little heads up from the governor's office may have helped us out a little bit this morning, but I'm not knocking the governor. I think he's done a decent job, as long as, and his staff as well. I'm just saying a little heads up would have helped went a long way with this meeting tonight, I think. So, but anyway.
And I think it's important to communicate that we don't actually have a choice, that the beach was opened by the governor with these requirements.
Right.
So in following it's very important that we communicate that the council is not making a choice here. The council is choosing to move forward in a sound and safe manner as quickly as possible. But we're not choosing to leave the beach closed tomorrow. The governor's office has not given us another choice.
So if I could make a suggestion, it sounds like there might be support for this. I agree with Councilwoman Holloway that our people need some sense of certainty on this. So how about this? Let's commit to opening the beach a week from tomorrow, and advertise that and explain. And I agree with Councilman Fulmer that we need to explain why this is. I mean, this was closed initially for a reason. That reason was a public health risk reason, and the governor has determined that you can open, but only with these conditions. If we don't try to meet those conditions, we're not serving the public interest. So give me a week to get as much of this in line as possible. If we don't make every single thing, well, we'll do the best we can. I mean, there's only so much we can do here. We'll try to reach out to Secretary Strickler again, see if there's some leeway that we have. But as a practical matter, I agree with the mayor. Private beaches are being operated right now. Let's make a good faith effort to meet as many of these safety requirements as we can in the next 7 days, and then plan to open. That would be my suggestion. I will, as I develop these plans, I'll send them to you, so you know what we're doing and more importantly, what the cost is going to be. This is not going to be cheap. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars of cost here. That's my proposal. Does that sound reasonable?
Yep. I would like to add something to that, Mr. Hosey, onto this conversation, if it's okay with you.
Go ahead.
I would like to open the park, social distancing, of course. I would like to open the tennis courts, and if the fishing pier is done, I would like to open that up as well. The playground, it says right in this executive order that playgrounds, gazebos still must remain closed. I think that's on item whatever. I'm good with that, but I think if we're going to open the beach, we discussed previous. I think we open the park up with social distancing, no more groups of 10. And maybe no gazebo, because we can't do the gazebos at the beach. And I would like to say the tennis courts and the fishing pier if it's completed. I don't know if it's even completed yet on the construction.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could address that, and let me just read it to you. What it says is all common areas that encourage gatherings, such as pavilions, gazebos, play sets, picnic areas must remain closed. This does not apply to fishing piers. So
Right.
I could read that some of these other public facilities that you mentioned, like the park, playgrounds, that sort of thing, they encourage gatherings. So
Right.
I would be cautious in throwing a wider net, but I'll do what you guys want.
And it is looking like phase 2 is going to be next Friday. So those items could go along with that, if he gives that direction. But I read that part myself and interpreted it that way as well.
Well, that's a good point. If we've got a week anyway, opening or closing those things that the mayor suggested is easy. I mean, and we can do it or not. I mean, so I could be prepared. So I'll prepare for it, and we'll decide later. We'll decide next week.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like the tennis courts, it's only a few people can fit in those anyway to play. We can limit it or whatever. I just phase 2, but yeah, come with a plan next week and see what it looks like staff wise of stuff, and maybe possibly bring it back to us next week sometime. And I'm sure I'll be talking to you throughout the week.
Okay, so that brings me to another point of what I wanted to cover, and that was again something that we touched on last week, and that is council meetings and how we're going to conduct them. And what the direction we got was that we were going to try to move in that direction of meeting in person again, with the ability for those who were uncomfortable could still come in on Zoom. And we just didn't have the time to figure that out for tonight, but we could probably have it figured out by next Thursday night, meaning that we could meet in person at the Civic Center, still using a component of Zoom, so that if a couple of council members needed to call in via Zoom, we could still do that. And then the rest of us could be in the council chamber. So I would propose that we do schedule another meeting next Thursday night. I will give you more details on the format of that, but that it'll probably be what I just expressed there. We would have the final plan for approval to open the following day, that following Friday. And then I would also be able to bring some other business that needs to come forward. I could also bring that forward as well, that needs to happen. So if there's no objection, I would like to schedule another meeting for next Thursday night.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm good with that.
Okay. On some other items I wanted to bring to your attention, we did get notice from the county that the town's portion from the CARE Act is $86,432. I was hoping for more, but it was distributed only based on population. This money, though, is restricted to only bona fide COVID-19 expenses, which this beach plan would qualify. So yes, when I said tens of thousands of dollars to implement that, that's the bad news. The good news is it looks like we may have a funding source for it. So that's hopeful. The other things I just wanted to touch on also on Monday, when the governor put out Executive Order 63, that required masks, that everybody wear masks everywhere. And again, this is one of these things you have to actually read the executive order to really see the detail, because it originally came out as that included government offices, both state and local government offices. But when you read the executive order, what that means is patrons need to wear masks, not all the employees. So if town hall was open to the public and a member of the public wanted to come in, they would be required to wear a mask. But I don't necessarily need to wear a mask sitting at my desk. That's kind of the long and short of it. The other part of the mask issue is that it's not enforceable. So the governor very clearly said that he wanted it Virginians to do this because it was the right thing to do, but he didn't want people to go to jail over it. And so basically he's not authorizing police to enforce this. Again, this is another well-intended initiative, but it winds up making us look bad because the average person doesn't understand this. The average person just hears the governor said everyone has to wear a mask. So what's going to happen is someone's going to see someone walking down Mason Avenue not wearing a mask. They're going to call us to enforce it. We won't enforce it because we can't. We're going to look like we're not doing our job. I mean, that's just that's kind of been the story throughout this whole thing, even with the loopholes on how the beach is being used and all of that. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know that's an issue. I mean, everyone should make an effort to wear a mask, but it's not enforceable. It's just the right thing to do. Also, in Executive Order 63, the governor extended the state's declaration of emergency indefinitely. And that's important to note because our declaration of emergency draws its authority from the state's declaration. And therefore, our declaration could also extend indefinitely. Now, of course, you as council could resend that at any time, but it's that declaration that gives us the authority to meet as we're meeting now and do some of the things we need to do. My understanding is that the General Assembly is been asked to come back in special session in August to address certain pieces of legislation that would fix a lot of these issues that we're having, because no one ever contemplated a pandemic that would last this long. A lot of the statutes that are in place just don't really account for that. For example, like it's in state code that you cannot have more than 2 phone-in meetings when we go back to regular meetings. Things like that could be fixed in code so that there could be exceptions to that for something like this. So anyway, so that was important to note that the state's declaration has been directed into indefinitely. I guess that's it, and I guess I just wanted to ask if you have any questions. Yes, Councilor Bowman.
On going back on mute, and it was breaking up a bit, so my apologies if I missed something that makes this question redundant. But when you were talking about the issues of the mask requirement making us look bad, someone walking down Mason Avenue, I'm correct, aren't I, that the requirement was for when people are indoors, spaces that are open to the public, correct?
That's how I read it.
Yes.
Because then I think what we'll see is what we saw mostly last weekend is people taking off their masks when they're walking on the street and putting them on when they came inside, which without the whole discussion of optimal, I think is what we can expect to continue. And a bright side of that is it does make things simpler for those of us who'd chosen to require masks be worn by patrons of our business. And it brings a level of consistency that just makes it a little easier to get people into that behavior.
Yes, sorry, I was imprecise. That was not a very good example. I guess what I meant was in a situation that is required by the executive order for a mask. If someone doesn't wear one in that situation, they could be reported to us and we wouldn't be able to do anything about it. That was my point, but you're correct. Thank you for clarifying that.
John, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said the town staff wouldn't have to wear a mask. I guess I have my personal feeling is that I look at a mask as a level of respect of those coming in and out. And I would hope that you would look at the staff and have a conversation about that, because I think if they're just sitting in their office, it's different. But if they're going to encounter the public, I just feel it's a bad example to set, even though we're not required. And that's just my opinion. I know not every one of our employees interacts with our residents or community on a regular basis, but I think leading by example is just a great thing to be able to do if we can.
Yes. Well, let me touch on that. It is my intention again, town hall is not open to the public right now.
Right.
But and even though it's not required, what I would work to do is when we do start interfacing with the public, we would either be wearing a mask if you're interfacing with the public, or we would have like plexiglass or something
Right.
there that would
Yeah.
protect them. But
Right.
that is my intention.
Okay, yeah.
John, do you intend on issuing something tomorrow as a communique?
Yes, sir. I wrote one. I already wrote one, but that's not going to work. I have to write another one. But yes, I will get one out as soon as possible tomorrow morning.
Do you think we could just we have a lot of people making comment on our Facebook streaming at this point. Could we just reiterate the reason of which we're waiting until June 5th? Because there are some people I think that have come in late and they just don't understand. It will just be a helpful way to get the message out that we're going to send tomorrow. If we could reiterate
Sure.
that.
Sure. I guess the approach I would take in my message would be along this line. That is that the reason for the beach closures were for public health reasons, and that the governor has the data to decide when it is safe and when it isn't. The governor has decided that it is now safe if, and this is the big if, you take these precautions. So if we were to open the beach now without taking these precautions, it is presumed to still be unsafe. Therefore, we are requesting 1 week's time to put these precautions in place so that we can open our beach safe. That's why we would wait 1 week.
And those precautions you said are like A through Q or something like that. They're a long list.
Correct. Basically, they did take the Virginia Beach plan and just put it in their EO for everyone to follow. So yes, we would need. They call them ambassadors. We call them attendants. Whatever you want to call them. We would need people on the beach monitoring activity, make sure that everyone's spaced out appropriately. There's very aggressive cleaning requirements. Everything has to be scrubbed and sanitized every 2 hours. That's not just the bathrooms. That's every high-touch surface. That means the love sculpture. That means the gazebo if it was open. But things like that. I mean, it's going to be a very labor-intensive effort. So we need to be able to put all these things in place. With signage, that's another requirement. We have to be able to develop signs. And I haven't even determined exactly what's going to be on the signs yet, but those have to be up at all the entrances. All these sorts of things have to be done in order to meet the requirements of this executive order. Mr. Buckholz?
John, is there a possibility to reach back out to the county, since we have a very unique asset in the county, basically a public beach that there's not part of this, that we can get some more funding for the CARES portion of it? Because if we have to staff it with, whatever you want to call it, the CARES ambassadors for Cape Charles on the beach, that we don't blow through that entire funding just hiring people to scatter people about. I mean, is there a possibility to talk to Charlie about that and see because it's a weird, unique asset in the county. The county doesn't have something like that. And we have to basically maintain or bring this thing up to snuff. It's not going to be cheap doing all the stuff to keep up with Virginia Beach. I mean, I can't imagine having drones flying around. We don't have to worry about a parking garage, but do we limit parking on Bay Avenue? There's all these, you're going to have people that we need to, if we have to pay the police overtime to cover shifts with more people, something like that. I mean, I'm hoping the county would step up to the plate with what they got allotted to them and realize that, population is one thing, but our population kind of triples in the summertime.
How about
We can certainly ask.
how about Mr. Hoses speak with Mr. Strickler, Secretary Strickler tomorrow, and maybe I know John had been working pretty much had a plan complete to send to the state anyway. So maybe there's some finesse room within what John's already created to coincide with some of this. So and then we'll see. And I apologize for leaving everybody. I've been juggling phone to whatever, and the phone I lost a battle. Oakland Chargers here, so.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for me? All right, Mr. Mara, that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, John.
Yep, thank you so much, John, for all you've been doing, and all your staff. So with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So moved in a second. Councilman Bannon,
Yes.
Councilman Buckholz,
Yes.
Councilwoman Holloway,
Yes.
Councilman Grossman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Councilman Fulmer, will you send us on our merry way, please?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank
We'll
you.